I know that I could misinterpret something that someone says to me. And so for me, I have come up with a whole system and a series of checks to make sure I'm not making those errors. And even with that whole system, I still make them, right?
Mhm.
So what are people doing out here who are communicating about this issue without even considering that they may be making a perception mistake or a communication error?
I don't know. There's like they're arguing just to argue. You know, a lot of people just want to be right. You know, they see something and they don't. You know, I don't know if they care or just they're just a straight emotional response, and you attack their side, so they must defend it at all costs. And I mean, yeah, I mean, just um,
And in reality, Mike, I have felt that, right? Many
we
times.
we all have for sure,
So I'm
for
not
sure.
I don't want to set myself apart from those
No,
other
no,
people,
no,
right?
no, no. We're all. It's like yeah. We should never make assumptions. Yet we always still find ourselves making assumptions, and we know that. And just a step in the right direction is just to like you know know that know if you did do that to revisit it and try to say was I flying off the handle? Am I right? Could it be this? Could it be that?
And
You
that's the
know,
key, right? Is to question yourself. Question yourself. And that's something that I've encouraged a lot of people who I haven't been able to get through to on Twitter, especially, that there's a lack of introspection. It's a pattern that I consistently see of people who are unable to grasp the realities of race in the country is that it typically is paired with a lack of self investigation and introspection. Now, I don't know exactly what all that means, but it's just a pattern that I've noticed. And so, since I just want to bring that up because you were just describing a way of like interrupting that, right? Interrupting those assumptions that you're making, interrupting those automatic things that happen in your mind, that are programmed in so that you don't make those errors. That's exactly what I've practiced doing. For me, it matters immensely to me because I'm someone who cares about the truth. And you're never going to get at the truth if you don't do that self investigation because ultimately your own biases, your own programming will take over unless you actively, consciously do something to rebuff it.
yeah. I mean, that's why I try, even because there's always going to be something that's going to elicit an emotional response, but I always try my very hardest to whenever something pops off to just remove all emotion from it, and just look at every possible reason for why what happened. Um,
I think you are a rare bird, sir.
I mean, I must be, but it's just because I don't think I think people are just so involved in their everyday lives. They just don't have the time. I don't know why this topic piqued my interest as much as it did. I mean, I do understand a little why, and that's just my own personal dealings with um, um, uh, white people, black people, and how the rhetoric on the national level is being discussed. But at the same time, it's just like the deep interest of it. People just people have their interests, and this type of stuff for a lot of people isn't it. They just rather put all their interest into sports or their kids or you know
Yeah, I hear you. And I think you're dead on. You're bullseye in that, like in my experience talking to people, that is the case, because what happens is oftentimes virtually every time I'm the one who initiates a conversation about race. Otherwise, it wouldn't
mm,
happen. That's why I'm so curious about you saying that, like, oh yeah, people talk about race because I'm like, I've been talking about this for 30 years with people of all races, and generally, um,
because Facebook's more personal, opposed to Twitter. I mean, that's what got me to Twitter. Because these are on my Facebook. These are friends. These are you got your random Facebook friends, but the majority of them, these are people I No. And um, having a conversation like about race and stuff with people over um, Facebook, unless it's like in a private chat, but like in a public setting where everybody's friends can comment, it's not a good idea. It's hard to get your point across. People are gonna do what they do and project, and um, so I came to Twitter so I didn't have to um, try doing it like I want to do it, but I don't want people I know to have any type of thoughts about me, especially if you haven't seen me since high school. I'm talking a certain way about that you may disagree with. And it just so it's like that's what got me to Twitter. It's like I can have these conversations with complete strangers. It's hard because to get to a level where you can actually converse. Like I said when I was commenting on your tweet a week or so ago about building rapport with people. It's easier to do that. Easier to have a conversation, a real conversation, when that's done, opposed to just hopping on someone's random comment on some random thread. But I forgot. I don't know my point of
No,
that
no, no,
rant.
that's okay. I totally agree with you. Like in terms of you know, connecting with people. What one thing that I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to transition to live in person events, right? Because I really feel like a lot of this is a heart issue. It kind of goes back to like people not really caring about the issue, and I think that you kind of mentioned that people don't have time or the energy to invest, but I really think it's more about priorities, right? Like your priorities shift when you recognize that something's having an impact on your life that you didn't realize before, right? From my perspective and the perspective of many academics who have studied this issue and most of Black America, race is having a significant impact on all of our lives, of all races here in America and in the world. And so ultimately, if we focus more on, educating people about this issue, the consequences that have arisen based on it, and kind of the world that we can build if we choose to focus on solutions, like some of the ones we were talking about earlier, that are not necessarily race-based, but that will target these areas where if we target them, then people's lives overall of all races will improve. It's easier for people to get to that point where they're accepting of that kind of direction when they truly understand the kind of environment that we're living in and how that environment is impacting them. Like you saying right now that you rather would be kind of like an anonymous Twitter person having these conversations than talking about it with your friends. That's going to resonate with a lot of other people who watch this, right? Because I think a lot of people feel the same way. A lot of people who've come to my racism discussion group have expressed the same thing. I've gotten notes from people after shows telling me, thank you for having this conversation. It's the conversation I wish I could have with my friends, you know? So there is this divide in terms of conversations. And I think you kind of nailed it when you said people can kind of project, get emotional, reject what they don't understand, or what they're loath to understand. So it's a very difficult situation, but it's so important for us to communicate about it. And I think friendships are a good place to start, even though it can be very difficult to get through it. My moderator for this channel is, my best friend for a long time. And we have not really had these conversations about race throughout our friendship until really I started this show, right? And his life started changing as a result of listening to these conversations, of learning more about race, of learning where his place was in it, because he's, he was a military brat who didn't grow up, fully in the United States or in one area. So he never really kind of took in a lot of the latent racial messaging, right? That a lot of people in this country do take in and internalize. So for him, he kind of viewed himself as separate from all of these issues. But now, the more that he's learned, just in the last couple years, he realizes his kind of place in it, and now he's way more active in having conversations with people about race. His relationship with people of color have deepened because he can now talk to them about these issues more competently because he has a greater understanding of them through watching the show and engaging.
Is he white?
Yes, he is white. It's really had a positive impact on his life and relationships. So I just want to encourage you and anybody who's watching that, don't shy away from these conversations, because even though they're difficult, they can really lead to actually positive consequences, not just conflict.
Like I said, any conversation I've had with a friend in person, they always go great. They always understand what I'm saying. It's just that random person that you haven't spoken to, that maybe you aren't even that good friends with, but you know each other, you're friends. And it's to have a conversation with them. It's got to be done more so on a personal level than like on a platform.
Totally agree, and that's the direction I'm exactly trying to move in. I agree.
Because it's just the way a lot of people. What I find a lot of people, friends, they want to make a post, not friends, just Facebook friends, make a post about racism or whatever. It's like majority of the time, over 90% of the time, there's not one original thought in what they said. They're just spewing what they've been told, and those are the people that you would like to get a actual conversation in, because it's like you can just tell that they haven't put much thought into it. They're just going with what they think they're supposed to think, and it'd be worthwhile trying to reach those people, but again, it's hard because do they really want to? No, a lot of people ultimately just want to look virtuous. I think
a lot of people just want to be left alone.
A lot of people do want to. Ultimately, me. That's me. I am a loner, and I like me. I like my small circle, and fuck everybody else. Just on a very basic level, like a lot of people look like fuck everybody else. So, but what if this happens? You can't do everything all by yourself. And it's like, no, obviously when certain things you come together as communities and do things, but just on a very basic level, like I'm one to be left alone.
Let's kind of hone in on that for a second, because I think that kind of mindset is a significant barrier to racial progress, right? Because you already acknowledged yourself that having that kind of personal conversation and connection, right, is something that does move the needle for people. It's something that like allows people to communicate a little more fluidly than like on these platforms and whatnot, where people feel more safe communicating about race, right? Because of the anonymity, and because, they can talk to strangers and then just forget about them, right? So given that reality, it would make sense that there needs to be more cross-race communication about these issues, right?
Absolutely. It's just the way that it's done is, I don't know if disingenuous is the right word to use, but it's hard. Like, it's just the two people that can't hear each other,
Yeah,
so
I think I've learned some skills over the years, to learn how to get people to hear me, learn how to hear others better, right? it's just basic communication techniques, I feel like. And I know it's difficult in a context where there's a lot of emotion, right? And it can be inflamed very easily. But for someone like me whose intention is to communicate, right? And whose intention is to understand, I don't find that to be such a significant barrier anymore. What I find to be a bigger barrier is the heart, not the mind, but the heart. Okay, that a lot of people don't want to open up their hearts to the idea of the actual lived experience that me and other Black Americans are having, because it's painful. Okay, and people want to escape that pain, and they can very easily by simply ignoring it. So I think that this has been the number one issue that has stopped us from making progress throughout the generations. And I think it still exists now. And I think as long as we have a mindset of staying in our silos, that we're not going to be able to change that. And I don't think if we change people's kind of closed hearts in the white community, that we're ever really going to gain enough power, collective power, to transform our communities and come together around this issue, which is what has to happen if we're actually going to make change.